while I'm here, and I was thinking about this, as cause of the LeBron James JJ Reddit podcast is is can we stop? Will it stop? I was like, can't stop. Oh, well, maybe he can't do that. Anyway, of this new media versus old media, like it's been a couple years now when that was like a cool term to sort of thing to throw around and talk about, especially as more and more athletes get, a chance to podcast, cause I was like, that's their avenue versus the big old media of like ESPN, Fox News, some of them people that's on there and stuff like that. Basically, the Stephen A's and the Colin Cowherds or, people of that ilk, you know uh, like the Nick Fright, the Chris Bouchard, all the people. Basically, you ain't never played what you talking about kind of people. And, as time has gone on, does it could give us a new way of doing things? Yes, it does. Is it more insight of things? Yes. Um, I was like, is there something there to give that basically old media doesn't give us? Of course, yeah. No, I was like, so I'm like, there was always a place for it. And they dabble with this sometimes with some other people trying to do like I can't remember the name of it now, but I was like, it's a thing that Derek Jeter created. But I was like, there's been attempts and stuff like that, and they try their darnest when they have athletes on some of these shows and stuff like that. But I guess also sometimes too, I guess people feel like they succumb to the evil forces, you know, talking about players and talking about this and that. But basically, the athletes were just tired of, I guess, certain narratives being pushed or certain ways to talk or talking down upon athletes and just ragging them and stuff like that. Which I can understand that because a lot of times it was over the top and too much of bashing athletes in situations where we're just like damn. But also let's not act like the times have changed too, where how I guess you talk about people or communicate about people is more to a softer tone, where it's like you tried your best kind of thing. So that also coincides with the over the top extreme nature of things. But let's also be real. It's the same damn thing. The same damn thing. Nothing really has really changed, and it doesn't fully matter. Okay, so how I would like the reason I say it doesn't really fully matter, and I guess in a way, is because if there would been really no way that the old media could really operate and do things that probably wouldn't have had y'all still in some way feeling about whatever it is that they would have said. I was like, you're only going to talk. You're only going to give them certain amount of information. They're not always there. I was like, they got to form their own opinion based off of whatever the information is getting. Which I mean, even granted, we still do that really to today. I was like, but sometimes it does go into the whole argument, debate, talk. Like headlines and all that other stuff. So it does take an extra level and an extra step, but it really wouldn't have mattered. It really would have still probably been at this as well because it's guess what, my story versus your story. So, um, also I don't really think that there's really much difference, and by that I mean when it first, like especially when the first when you get to when a lot of athletes get their like they're starting up on their podcast, you do get a lot of truth or insight that you're not going to get in many other spots. But like everything else, guess what? You start to realize that ain't going to keep things going. Yes, you will always build like your little niche base, your day ones and stuff like that. But guess what? We all want to keep growing. We all want to get more people. So guess what? That doesn't change of how you might start doing things or talk about things. Um, I was like, and some people have found really cool and dope ways to do this. I was like, Draymond really is basically because it's him. Because it's him, I think that really would drive more than anything because Draymond's a polarizing figure. Jeff Teague's like podcast. I was like, I think it's like his personality and the stories they got, but they don't really. But they sort of got it. They sort of got a light way of doing things. They're not in depth and stuff like that. And even with Paul George, I was like, they talk about stuff. They'll talk about basketball, but they're not going too in depth, and they're also not being ridiculous with it either. So I was like, they found like a little middle ground. With Gilbert Arenas. I was like, when you first see him, first started out, it was kind of like, I was like, okay, cool, we're gonna talk about basketball. Then as now time's gone on, they're all in the ridiculous space as well too sometimes, while talking about basketball things. So they're not old media, but they're not how people describe new media as. They're a little bit more up towards, to find like what's going to have engagement and stuff like that. And guess what? At some point, you got to. Um, Also, I think another thing is that guess what? At some point, you realize that hey, well, we needed an engagement. That we're going to delve into something that sounds a little weird, a little funky, or whatever. But also too that hey, there's also the fact that y'all are also wrong too, or y'all have stuff that sounds ludicrous, and just because I was like, I ain't never laced them up. That don't mean that I'm like, that sounds weird. That don't make sense. What you talking about? Um, I was like, one, they could be bad. They can have information wrong, which is fine to an extent because it's like, hey, you can only do enough research, or maybe you're just coming from your heart or how you just see things or whatever. So I was like, information being missing. I was like, sure. And then sometimes a lot of y'all just talking outside of your neck, where y'all just over here just spouting off stuff, or you sound hating, biased, whatever you want to call it, just like you would say with the old media. Um, so I was like, they could be wrong in their assessment as well. And I was like, which sort of gets into a weird place when you see athletes versus other athletes, because then it's like, well, what are y'all doing now? Now it sounds like y'all going at each other for something about the same thing. Um, but also, and all in all, well, yes, like I said, this space would have been created no matter what, even if the quote unquote old media would have done things how y'all would have liked. And also, you got to give something up to being like, they also wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that. Just because, would there be an avenue where like I want to hear from insert player here talk about stuff? Yeah, but but the wave I would say of people is because of old media, and in a way because they had to be the way they had to engage with people because they're doing stuff on TV and in the show and stuff like that. That you wouldn't be here wouldn't necessarily without that, because if that was the case, it would just be the select people that already sort of go into media sort of anyway. Where it's like, yes, you might go on TV, but it'd been like more top players. Like Theo Pinson got a podcast. Now, would Theo Pinson really have a podcast if old media would have done right and stuff like that? And no, I was like, no, he might have probably found his way on TV and stuff like that, but maybe not a podcast. Not saying that he's not good at it. I was like, I've seen the show. I was like, really chill and stuff like that. But the way that everybody's able to is basically because they're all like, I got my story or my narrative or my thing or that I gotta say, that basically they don't want to do, or they don't treat us right and all that other stuff, and thus spawns the millions and millions of athletes that basically out here wanting to do the podcast. So on one hand, yes, would they probably still exist here? Yes, there would have been always a space for them. The drones and drones of them, no, not this rate, and it's only because the how they felt that they were being treated from the other side of the media, and that's really what. So I was like, all in all, I was like, I don't think that this is really the bad. I think or something. I think this is really like at the time when it first all started happening. Yes, I was like there was an old media versus new media kind of thing, but like I sort of said before, new media at some point is going to not only be old media just because they're gonna just like die out while like the new media is gonna. I mean, not and I don't mean die out like that form is gonna go away. I mean like the old heads, or they're literally just gonna like stop at some point. But I was like, but that will still exist over there. It will just take on a new look, and you're gonna get younger people, so they're gonna be a little bit softer in the way they talk about things and stuff like that. New media, technically with the athletes and stuff like that, will still be here, and it will eventually, like everything else, get oversaturated and stuff like that. And you got to find out ways to do stuff, especially once, depending on how you want to do your career. Yes, you're gonna have your fans, but everybody wants to grow. Um, but then eventually, like everything else, you just end up becoming like what it was in just a different form. I was like, that really is you really just going to be. It's like 1.0, the prototype, 2.0, and then we'll have something else in the future generations or whatever. And because maybe these people who are currently here will turn into the mold head and say something that the young ones won't like, and we'll just repeat this all over again, whatever we is. But anyway, it's non. It's really non-existent at this point. I mean, look, I can still conversate about it or whatnot. But anyway, I bid y'all deuces.